Real quick, before we go any further, I just have to let you know, those in the room, that there are people who are participating in this service literally all over the globe at this point. There are people that are watching from Canada right now, all the way to Korea. I kid you not. Those are two places I'm for sure and know that people are participating as Vivid Church in their own home from around the world. So can we just welcome everybody online who's participating today? Thank you. This whole idea of being a spiritual desperado is one that might sound so foreign to you. And I don't know if you saw the Facebook ads we did or the posts we did, but I was on a camel with a camel that drinks Mountain Dew, dressed up like Zorro is what it looked like. Does anybody see that? Anybody see those? Just raise them up. Okay. Anybody not see it? Just raise your hand. You didn't see it. Okay, great. On Facebook, you'll see all those little things, but we got camels out here and farm animals and all this, and you might be wondering, like, what in the world does this have to do with Jesus? Because this don't make sense. Everything that I'm seeing is not, there's a tomb and there's a cross, and I just got to, how are we going to connect the dots here? And I just want to take the next few minutes to try to show you the reason that we chose to do it this way is we wanted to address the misconceptions about who Jesus was, what he did, and why it matters. And I just simply say that as he approached the world, he came as a different sort of guy. I call him a desperado because he was like a outlaw moving from town to town, robbing darkness blind out of the heart of man. And so he came as a rebel, as a robber, and all of this to say he is a desperado. And define desperado simply means this: someone who is willing to do things that involve risk or danger, often criminal things. Criminals who are not afraid of getting hurt or caught. And when I stare at the life of Jesus through the pages of this book here, all I can say is he put himself at great risk, in danger, oftentimes was called a criminal, and was not afraid at all of getting hurt or getting caught. My God is a spiritual desperado. Are you tracking with me so far? And so Jesus asks a question to his followers. As he's walking along in Matthew 16, he's walking in Caesarea Philippi is the place, and as he's walking along, he asks his 12 disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" You ever wanted to know what people say about you behind closed doors? Some people were like, "No, I don't want to know. I'd rather not, thank you." So his followers try to answer the question and say, well, you're sort of like this guy or this guy. Some say it's like you're kind of like Jeremiah, you're sort of like Isaiah, but some people just say you're like just a prophet from the old times that feels sort of like that, what we would feel them as. And he's not satisfied with their answer. And he asks his 12 disciples, I don't really care about what they say. Who do you say that I am? And I think that's a really important question because it's the same question that God is asking you right now. Who do you say that I am? And I believe that our answers to that question will tell us if we want to follow Jesus or not. And oftentimes, I've seen us sum up Jesus into one word and blanket Jesus' entire story with words that don't really match the person that we see in Scripture. Some people say, who do you say that I am? Oh, well, Jesus, he's too judgmental for me. I wouldn't want to follow him either if that's all he was. I wouldn't want to walk with him at all. And some people would say, yeah, he's too religious. That's the best I got. I just want to conclude him in one word. He's too religious. No, in fact, he's just too boring. You know, you can't have any fun if you want to do all of the Jesus stuff. And when I hear this and I hear these words and all this, I'm thinking to sum him up into one word would be as if you had a guitar and you simply plucked one note on the guitar and said that's all that the guitar could ever play. If we summed each of us up in one word and somebody said, who do you say that I am? And they were honest with you and said, well, sort of, I kind of sometimes think you're dumb. That's all you got out of this? That's the sum total of my existence summed up into one word. I think Jesus is every note strung together. He's more than you could ever ask, think, or imagine. He's a giant personality. He can play music that has no beginning or end. He's got notes of himself and character traits strung together that lead us to conclude that he is worth following. But we've like extracted the personality of Jesus from the pages of history, and we've simply left the black and white words we read and just tried to tame down the dynamic leader that he is. We have a pet at home, and he's a little white schnauzer named Winston. Anybody have a pet? Anybody have a pet? Come on, participate with me. Yeah, okay. Got a pet. Who got dogs? Anybody got dogs? Okay, dog. Anybody got cats? Okay, now when we get to heaven, I'm not sure, we can't tell. Dogs, they might make it to heaven. I don't know. Cats won't. I just need to let you know. Cats, they don't make the cut, okay? Have you ever looked at your animal though and you're like, wow, he's just so funny. They can't even talk. Well, he's just so humorous and he's kind of witty, and then you start describing to him, oh wow, she's just so playful in the mornings. Oh man, wow, they've had such a big appetite and all of this, and we start to ascribe all these character traits to our pets. Why is it that our pets have bigger personalities than Jesus Christ? That we have totally omitted who he is, what he did, and why it matters. And today, if the answer to the question, which is the question, who do you say that I am, is the wrong answer, then you will not really learn to follow the man named Jesus. And so I come today to help bring new answers to the question, to submit to you, simply to hope that I bring you back into alignment to what it is that I see Christ being, because he said, I'm way more than anybody could ever understand. There's more to Jesus than meets the eye. And so Jesus, he says, I am the way to life. I am the truth. I am the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. And what he tried to do is infiltrate the entire world with who he was inside people. And that was the desperado nature of him, is that he wanted to come into people's hearts, and he wanted to pull the darkness out there and replace it with his light and say, there's a new way to life that you can live. And as he did all of this, he rallied followers to himself. And in the book of Acts, they didn't know what to call it. They didn't even call it Christianity, and they didn't call it the church. They said, we call ourselves followers of the way. Simply that. We call ourselves the followers of the way, which some people call a sect, and that way has been trying to push forth into the world. But the problem is that just like the people that Jesus was trying to correct, the church oftentimes throughout several hundred years has mislabeled Jesus, and our experiences with the church are transposed onto the pages of Scripture, and we ascribe words and labels to Jesus that he does not give himself. Therefore, we think he's not worth following because of the labels and the titles and the positions that we have given him. And I want to help break those off. Like I said, some people would sum him up and say he's just judgmental. Who do you say that I am? I call you a judgmental God. I don't want to follow you. There's this story in the New Testament where Jesus comes into contact with a woman who was caught in the act of adultery. I don't think I need to really unpack that too far. I think that it speaks for itself. She's in a house with another man, and people come into the home and catch her in the middle of the act, and they rip her out of the house, and they walk outside in broad daylight, and she's embarrassed and completely dishonored by this moment, and they throw at the feet of Jesus, and they say, these Pharisaical religious people say, Jesus, she has to be stoned. So we brought all these stones, and we got to put her to death because the law would have her condemned. Jesus he's a bad dude. They say, so what do you want to do? The law says she has to be condemned and put to death. What do you say about that? Has anybody ever asked you ever asked you a question and the question was so appalling that you responded with silence, and the tension filled the moment, and the cortisol started to leak. Maybe you were on the opposite of it, where you asked them a question and they just stared you down. That's what Jesus does in this moment. I mean, I dare say I think he's a little passive-aggressive right here. They ask him this question, what do we want to do with her? And as he looks at him, takes his finger, never says a word. You know why? Because silence can't be misquoted. Some questions you don't need to answer. Some of y'all talk too much. You just need to. That one's free. You know what he does? It says he starts doodling in the sand. You know how rebellious this is. He doesn't even give them the common decency of an answer. He's a different Jesus than what we think he is. And so he puts his finger in the sand, and we don't know what he writes, but he writes something in the sand. And some scholars would say that he actually started writing the names of the people who were accusing her of being caught in the act of adultery. And he looks at him and he goes, yeah, you caught her in the middle of it, but I know what you did last night, Jack. Let me just write your name, J-A-C-K, fornication, greed, pride, need. I keep going. And what happened is the old to the young started to drop their stones. They're like, please quit the list. Stop the list. They're going to know all my stuff now. And so he said, he without sin, you cast the first stone. And no one was able to cast a stone. We don't know what he wrote, but whatever he wrote in the sand was proof positive that they wanted him to pass judgment on her. And he said, I don't pass judgment on people. I accept them the way they are. You, if you're thinking, who do you say that I am? He's judgmental. I combat that. That's a lie, because he accepts this woman and he says, come into relationship with me. I'll accept you the way you are. But listen, he says, now go and sin no more. I love you enough to not leave you before you're changed. I accept you the way you come right in this moment, but I love you enough to tell you what to do next so that you can leave forever changed. He's accepting this personality that can bypass sin. He can bypass right and wrong. He can bypass that. And he is a desperado because what they wanted him to do, he intentionally rebelled against. He went his own way. He risked his reputation so that he could accept people. That's the Christ, the Son of the living God, who would accept anybody just the way they are, with no judgment on what has happened in anyone's past. That's gospel, that's Bible, but next it gets better. Some people will say, Jesus is just boring. Who do you say that I am? Jesus is boring. No, I mean, there are some people who might follow this ideal of Jesus, and they might seem a little less passionate about their life. I'll give you that. Well, let me tell you, Jesus is anything but boring. Anything but boring. Listen, they wanted him to be more boring. In fact, they killed him because he wasn't boring enough. He was not safe. He was too dynamic. He was too outlandish. He was too different, but he was anything but boring. There's another story where Peter, this disciple and the other disciples are out at a night at sea, and the winds are raging, and it caused all the water to start raking up, and the waves are breaking high, 4, 5, 6 feet. It's a stormy night. And on this stormy night, they're just trying to paddle as hard as they can to get through the whole thing. And Jesus has been on a mountainside praying, and as he's been on a mountainside praying, he decides, I need to get with the disciples, but they pushed off ashore before I was in the boat with them, so I need to figure out a way to get to them. And so in the middle of all of this, he decides that he's going to get in the boat. They're in the middle of the sea. And so they're in the middle of the sea, and he wants to get into the boat. And so out of nowhere, they all get shocked and afraid and scared. What is that? And they look out there, they're like, it looks like a ghost. There's something that's on the water walking. And it's just Jesus just deciding to have some fun. He's not boring. He just decides, I'm just going to walk out on water. I needed to be with you guys. I needed to come out onto the waves so I could get back into the boat with you and we could make our journey. You left without me. I had to get in the boat. Teleporting would have been cool, but walking on water's cooler. Well, there's one kind of ornery disciple, Peter, and he said, oh, Lord, well, I want to have fun too. So if it's you, Lord, tell me to come out there and I'll walk on the water with you. So Jesus says, well, this will be fun. Well, Peter, why don't you just climb on out here and join me out on the waves? And so, Peter, I have a decent imagination. I don't think you could tell. Decides that he's going to, I guess, crawl on the edge of the boat, and he's staring at Jesus, and as he steps on the waves, now remember it's wavy, so he's kind of surfing, just trying to just get it right and just riding the waves. And as he's trying, it's like risky in this whole thing. Sometimes God asks you to do things that are risky because he's fun. He's not boring. I said yes to Jesus many years ago, and it has been a roller coaster every step of the way. It looks like this some days. I'm like, God, we're doing what? You want me to follow you where? I don't want to plant a church. That's what it looks like inwardly. And so Peter's walking on it, and what happens is that Peter takes his eyes off Jesus and he realizes, oh, wow, I don't know if I could do what you asked me to do. And his faith drops, which means he sinks into the waves. But right before he sinks, Jesus catches him and he said, oh, man, you did so good. Where was your faith? Don't you know that I'd be here every step of the way? Don't you know that I could be with you? But he pulls him up right out of the failure. And I love this because anytime that you failed, Jesus acknowledges the fact that you tried. And when he acknowledges the fact that you tried, he says, come on, this is not a boring life. It's an adventurous life. It's a fun life to follow Jesus. And I want to call out the best in you. And I have to conclude something. The very next verse says that they got back into the boat. I have a question. How did they get back into the boat? The answer, I believe, is once Peter's pulled up on top of the water again, there's some distance away from the boat. That in the fun-loving, playful, cunning, and witty personality of Jesus, I believe that he puts his arm around Peter and he says, you want to walk on water again? And they proceed, to the best of our informational knowledge of the text, to walk back onto the boat. Listen, anytime that you fail and that you fall and you feel like you're sinking, God will always pick you back up, and he's got enough grace to help you walk back again. He's got enough grace and mercy and love to help you cover it twice. And all the people in the boat who are like, why would you ever get out of the boat and try this? Listen to me. I would rather be a wet water walker than a dry boat talker any day of the week. This is a faith about trying. This is a faith about adventure. This is a faith about God. Wherever you go, I just want to be in the room because I know you're bigger than what I think you are. You can do things that I could never even imagine with my life. That's what he did everywhere he went. Who do you say that I am? You got to respond with, well, boy, you are adventurous. It is hard to keep up. That's a fine response. Some people would say, oh, who do you say that I am? He's just religious. He's got all these rules. Don't do this. Do that. I don't want to don't that, and I don't want to do this. I want to don't that, and I don't want to do this. I'm like, he's not religious. There was a story of this group of people who were paralyzed at this pool called Bethesda, and it's like a big old hot tub in the middle of a courtyard, and there's all this granite walls that are surrounding it in columns, and so they would sleep kind of under the columns where it has some shade, and they would crawl their way to the pool. And as they crawled into the pool, it would alleviate, because the water's warm, the muscular tension they were feeling, which would help them be more limber, just like a hot tub would. And so in that, there was this one particular guy who wanted to get into the hot tub, and Jesus said, well, why don't you get in? And he said, well, every time I try, somebody cuts me off and I'm just not able to get into the water. Long story short, Jesus says, well, I am the water and I can heal you of that paralysis. And he reaches down and he touches him and he heals the man of his paralysis. And when he heals him of his paralysis, this man gets up and he walks away, and the lame man is now set free because he gets his healing from the true healer, not just a bucket of water that has healing properties in it. But what was funny about the whole story is that there were these really religious people. And they looked at Jesus, they said, you can't do that. We don't believe in healing people on the day of the week that you healed him. See, you healed him on the seventh day of the week, and that is called the Sabbath. And the law states that we are to keep the Sabbath holy. We're not allowed to heal people on the Sabbath. And Jesus looks at them and says, you've missed the point of all of this. Religiosity is to take the law in its full letter and govern our lives by the full letter of the law. It says this, so we do this. It says don't do that, so we don't do that. And they exploited it, and they married themselves to the legality of it, and they divorced themselves from God. And when you do that, you become a legalistic morality police. Don't nobody want to follow that. Nobody wants to follow that, and we have infiltrated the church with this strange theology of what that means to be legalistic. And when we do that, nobody wants to be a follower of the way. And Jesus looks at all that and says, I can heal anybody anytime I want to. I'm a desperado. I go my own way. I forge my own path. I didn't come to do what you thought that I would do, because I care more about the man in his paralysis than I do about your concept of religiosity. Why? Because I'm not religious. I'm relational. That he's a relational God who wants to look into your situation and he wants to heal you. But simultaneously, because he's relational, he intentionally chooses to heal the man on the Sabbath, so that he would be healed. But he could have done that on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday. But he does it on a Sabbath because he's so relational. He said, I want to not only heal him of his paralysis, I want to heal your minds of your theological paralysis that you have of me. I'm that relational that I can even address the haters while I'm addressing the one who needs help. Woohoo! That's Jesus. He's accepting. Oh, he's so irreligious. There's not a religious bone in his body. They said, what do you think about the law? There's 460 plus laws in the Old Testament. He said, yeah, they all hang on two things. Just love God and love people. It'll figure itself out. And they said, you came to abolish the law? He said, no, I came to bring you back into alignment to fulfill the law. That I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And the enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy our mindset of how we think about Jesus. And he's done a pretty good job of it. But Jesus said, I came to give life to the full. Christianity is not about bad people becoming good. It's about dead people becoming alive. And that is why we follow the way, because it's as if my life went from black and white into full-blown color when I said yes. He's so much different than what you might think he is. And on Easter Sunday, I just wanted to give an obituary of a man who didn't need one because he didn't stay dead so long. It's kind of hard to preach his funeral because there was really no long-lasting funeral. But when we're at funerals, we talk about the life of the person lived. But I want to submit to you that he's all these things. He's so trustworthy. You can trust him with your whole soul, that his personality is larger than that he's loyal. Scripture says he'll stick with you closer than a brother, that he's helpful. He can help us overcome the sin that we feel and the guilt and the shame and the depression and the anxiety that we feel, that he's courteous. He can show men how to be more like a gentleman, and he can show a lady how a gentleman should lead. Oh, he's kind, and he's all of these different things full of truth and grace and mercy and grit, and he's wonderful to be followed. And that's the picturesque person of Jesus that they wanted to get across, was we got to be followers of the way, because this is the way, and Jesus was the ultimate desperado. And they all thought that he would come into some political power and he would reign as a true earthly king, reigning over people and instilling new laws and new government. And he said, I did come as a king, but I came at my own way because spiritually I had to rewrite what happened. See, what God formed, man deformed, and Christ reformed. And when he did it, he came in his own way and nobody saw it coming because he said, I want to infiltrate everybody from the ground up. I want a grassroots movement. And when people come into this way, they will begin to learn this way. And as they learn this way, I teach them to continue to share this way. We are people who should show people the way. We have to tell people the way. We have to lead people into the way. And when we do all of that, Jesus says, Matthew 28:19, therefore go into all the world, making disciples. And surely I'll be with you to the very end of the age. But that word disciples, what does that really mean? Wasn't he teaching them to do the very thing he did? When the world says we should judge people, we don't judge people, we accept people and we lead people. And when everybody thinks that the law should be that this whole thing is a boring game, we show them that Jesus is anything but. He's dynamic, adventurous, he's playful, he's fun. That in all of this, that we show people that we are followers of the way. And if Jesus was a spiritual desperado, I think what he's saying is, therefore go and make more desperados, to infect people with the contagion of Christ, showing them the way to everlasting life. That is the point. And so I come today as a person who's just trying to rob darkness right out of your heart of what you might have labeled Christ to be, because the question's still on the table. Who do you say that I am? And your response matters. Peter looked at him and he said, you're the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of the living God. You're the chosen sent one to ransom, redeem, and rescue mankind back unto yourself, but you're fully God. You're a living God, which was prophetic because the thing that he defeated is death itself. You know, there's nobody in any other religion that you want to talk about that would even claim that they were God. Muhammad stayed away from that and said, I'm not God. Buddha stayed away from that and said, no, I'm not God. We wouldn't dare say that. Jesus, being the desperado and risking the reputation, said, no, I am that. I'm fully God. I'm fully man. And everybody else who died, who ascribed themselves to some other religious way, is still sitting in the grave that's 3 foot wide and 6 foot deep. But the only person who has ever conquered death itself, being fully resurrected back to life, is Jesus. And that puts hope and faith in our hearts, because if that doesn't happen, everything I'm talking about is meaningless. Live however you want. Do whatever you want with your time. But if that is true, then God put his seal of approval on Jesus, the man, saying he was Jesus, the God, to usher in a new kingdom that would propagate the way to life now and life then. We preach about heaven a lot, and today, yes, is a moment to celebrate that we will all be in heaven one day for those who say yes to him. But a lot of people are like, well, what about now? I just came to tell you he's for you today. Because talking just strictly about everlasting life and what will come in eternity would be like saying your vows on your wedding day and putting a ring on your finger and looking at the person and say, our retirement will be good at 65. And the spouse looks back at the other spouse and says, well, what about the first 40 years of this thing? What about all that? I want the marriage, not just the retirement. Jesus came that you would have the marriage of life to him right now, and that life would be better than a life without him. That's what this is all about. And so Jesus, he talks about how he'll end up dying, and he's got to go to Jerusalem. And when he goes to Jerusalem, he has to stand on trial. And when he stands on trial, there's a governor who wants to look at Jesus, and he really does want to release him because he can't find any charge that he's committed. But he can't release him because everybody's pushing Jesus on trial to be crucified. And in this process, he says, well, we're nearing the day of the week where I can release a prisoner to you that's sitting on death row. So I'll let you choose who I release. Could you stand with me as I share that story with you from Matthew 27? Matthew 27, verses 21 through 26 say this. Which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. They looked at this prisoner over here named Barabbas, and they said, Barabbas, he's a murderer, he's a thug. He had been arrested for insurrection, trying to overthrow the government. We know factually that he had actually murdered people. And they said, we want him. Barabbas is who we want you to release to us today. And he said, what shall I do then with Jesus, who's called the Messiah? Pilate asked. They all answered, crucify him. Pilate, he said, why? What crime has the man committed? But they shouted all the more. You know why? Because they couldn't find any crime to actually bring about him. So they just overspoke and said, crucify him, shouting all the louder. And when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he went over to this basin of water and he washed his hands in front of the crowd so they could see him. And he said, I'm innocent of this man's blood. It's your responsibility. And all the people answered, his blood is on us and our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. There's two prisoners standing on trial. One is Jesus and the other is Barabbas. And the crowd wants Barabbas released. This person who is deserving of the crucifixion, that's the penalty he's due. That's what has to happen to him because he broke the law. Because he broke the law in so many different ways, the penalty and the punishment for the laws he broke end up in one place, the crucifixion. But as you study what Barabbas is and what it means, Barabbas, his name Bar means son. Abba means father. His name literally means son of the Father. And so they release the son of the Father to go into the crowd. And then they have accused Jesus of starting an insurrection, the same thing that they accuse Barabbas for. That you tried to overthrow the government and he tried to overthrow the government. And so, in fact, you're so similar, he'll take on all the things that you deserve. But this is also a symbol of God looking down from heaven and he's saying, I had to treat Jesus as if he were Barabbas so that I could treat Barabbas as if he were Jesus. So I'll substitute Barabbas out and I'll substitute in Jesus, the true Son of the Father, so that I can replace him so that Barabbas can be free. This is the gospel message because today on trial, we are Barabbas. That every single one of us would say, I'm the one who committed it. I'm the one who's tied up. I'm the one who deserves the death that I am due for the sin that I committed. And God, in all of his forgiveness, he's not condemning. He is forgiving. He says, I want to show you how forgiving I am, and I'll replace myself in your shoes. And he says, go, son, live your life as a free man. I'll take it on so that you don't have to. I'll literally remove the sin so that you don't have to pay the penalty for it, so that you can live your life. And too many of us at times have tried to keep ourselves on trial and stand on stages and say, no, but it's me who has to bear the weight and the guilt and the shame and the pain. And let me tell you, when Jesus died, it's so scandalous the freedom that he has, because he died for all the past sins that you ever committed, for all the present ones that you are currently committing, but so much bigger than that, he died for all the future ones that you'll commit too. He said, go live your life. I remove the death from you and I take it on so that you can be free. That is an outlaw, a desperado who went his own way, truly hanging as the criminal, committing no crime, practicing the reverse of what everybody said should happen. That's why spiritually he comes to seek and to save those whom are lost to ransom and redeem mankind back unto himself. With every head bowed and every eye closed, I want to pray for those people who would say, I don't even know what this is all about. All I know is that my heart's moved. Who do you say that I am? I think some people are saying I'm seeing him a little different. And if you'd be so courageous to say, I'd just give him a try. Some people say, I don't like the way that I was born. I say, well, why don't you try being born again? What do you have to lose? I said yes to Jesus when I was 11 years old, and it's taken me all over the nation, into places and families and people that I never would have met. And I just encourage anyone to take that step. There's no ulterior motive here. There's one motive here, to bring people closer to Jesus. And I want to ask, is there anybody I can pray for who wants to say yes to Jesus and say, I need a relationship with him? If that's you and you say, I need that forgiveness today, that acceptance today, I need that life that he has for me today, I want to pray with you right where you are. And all I want you to do is raise your hand on the count of 3, and I'll pray right now for you. 1, 2, 3. If that's you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I want to lead us in a prayer this morning. This prayer here it's what it is it's like your soul is a house, and this prayer is like the front door to the house. And all we're doing right now from the inside is we're turning the lock, we're opening the doorknob and swinging the door wide. And on the other side of that door is Jesus. He's got a smile on his face, and he wants to come into the home, which is your soul. And he wants to set up residence. And I want you to see him as he's hugging you, as he's saying, I'm proud of you as a son and daughter in the faith. I'm here now. I don't care what bedroom 1 looks like. I don't care if the kitchen's a mess. We'll get to it later. I'm just proud. Let's all pray this prayer together as we open the doors for people to know Jesus. Dear Jesus, I give you my life. Take all of me. I let you in. I choose to follow you. So set up residence here. Teach me what to do. Fill me with your spirit. I'm all yours. In Jesus' name, amen. If you just said that prayer, welcome home. So proud of you. So thankful for you, for all that God is about to do in your heart and life. I'd love to meet you at the Connections tent with my wife, Amanda. Thank you for being a part of this Easter Sunday with us. So excited for what God has in store.